Good morning.
Good morning, Doug.
Hi. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning, Robert. Okay, so we're 29a near the top, fourth line. And the Mishnah had said, had discussed a person, how a man can make his son a Nazir, but not his daughter. And the same privilege is not extended to the mother. So a father can make the son a Nazir, but he cannot make the daughter a Nazir, and the mother cannot make either of them a Nazir. So we had two reasons for that. So Reish Lakish says it's a rabbinic thing in order to it's part of teaching, right? You teach your son about being a Nazir. But Rabbi Yochanan said it's just a tradition. It's halacha l'Moshe Messina. It's halacha, he said. So the Gemara has a number of questions about that, or challenges. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it's easy to explain. If you just say it's a tradition, so the tradition is only the rule is established. It doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need a proof text. It's just, this is the rule, the father only and the son only. But according to Reish Lakish, that says it is a part of teaching. Then you have a number of questions. Yesterday we asked, well, why only the father? And the answer was that only the father is charged with the responsibility of teaching, and only to the son, not to the daughter, which I found kind of challenging, but as I said yesterday, I don't have the tools to explore that right now. But the Gemara is going to continue to examine this or to challenge Reish Lakish. It's okay according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's just a halacha, just a tradition. So Bitalo. So now I understand why the son, he can make a Nazir and not the daughter. Right? That's just the rule. You should be according to Reish Lakish. It says the teaching is not you're supposed to teach your daughter. So it must be that Reish Lakish holds you have to train your son and not your daughter. And this is extremely surprising because so who's supposed to teach her, right? We just said the mother doesn't have to teach anybody. The father only has to teach the son, who's supposed to teach the daughter about mitzvahs. So, I mean, this is just according to Reish Lakish, perhaps, but still, it seems very surprising. Now, it's possible, I suppose, that we're talking about teaching specifically in this narrow area about Nazir, right? So maybe you could posit, and I'm just making this up, right? But you could posit that we're only talking about the teaching about the rules of Nazir. Okay. Sorry. Is there a comment? Okay. Now, what about according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's just a tradition? So it would make sense that the Mishnah tells us that this is a rule about Nazir, that the father can make the son a Nazir, but that doesn't apply, apparently, we never heard about this before. It doesn't apply to any other nether. I can't enforce a nether on my son that he, not play baseball or something. So maybe that's just the rule, but it only applies to Nazir. Ella Reish Lakish, according to Reish Lakish, I feel a bit darim name. Why shouldn't it apply also to nether? And Nazir is just a special case of a nether. So why shouldn't I be able to, if I can impose Nazirus on my son, I should be able to impose other types of Nadarim? Well, let me buy a comment. So where it says actually that is the case, and the Mishnah is saying it's a not only this but even that construct. Lo me buy ben Nadarim delay slain evil, not only in a regular nether that like where there's no negative connotation. So we saw in the Mishnah, or yesterday in the Mishnah, that a husband can object to the wife becoming a Nazir because he doesn't want a wife who doesn't drink wine. Okay, we call that nivul, right? There's some kind of negative connotation. You want a wife who's going to go with you to the party and drink wine. Okay, but that doesn't apply to other nadarim. So the son doesn't play baseball. So what, right? So it's not only can you impose a neder that has no value connotations, you can even impose a Nazirus, which has value connotation. Even Nazirus, which deprives the son of drinking wine, you still have the obligation to teach it. Okay. Okay, there was another detail that if the son protests or the relatives, some other relative protests and say this isn't appropriate, and then the son is released from the Nazirus, like why should that be? What do they? If this is how the father wants to teach the son doesn't have shouldn't have a right to reject it, and certainly other relatives shouldn't have a right to reject it. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's okay. Maybe that's just the rule, right? El Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina, Rish Lakish, according to Rish Lakish, Kol Kaminehon Karovim Damrin Le Lo Tigmurei Mitzvos. What does the relatives have a right to teach the father, to tell the father how to teach the son mitzvos? So more answers kasavar kol chinuch lo chashiv lo nichale. So the Gemara answers that the relatives are kind of standing up for the son, right? So the son, we understand, certainly has the right to reject, just as any person has has the right to. So that I guess the perhaps the obligation of teaching does not override the autonomy of the son, right? So the son doesn't have to accept it, and presumably the relatives are stand-ins for the son. Okay, that if the relatives think that this is something the son would not want to do, then that is a good out, even though it's a chinuch thing. Once again, okay, what about the shaving? So the shaving, we haven't really discussed this before, I don't think, but shaving the head, that's all well and good, but isn't there a mitzvah against cutting off the corner of your hair? So if you shave your whole head, doesn't that violate something? So all right, so if it is a real Nazirus, that someone accepts on themselves, and that's the rules of Nazirus, that it overrides the prohibition against cutting the hair. But if this is just a rabbinic thing to teach the son, then why would that? Then why would you allow hair cutting at the end of it? Or we also Rabbi Chanina, according to Kedei L'Chanchal mitzvos, if the reason that you can give Nazirus to your son is to teach for teaching purposes, but you're violating a biblical prohibition then. More answers more answers that the according to Reish Lakish's view, it must be that the Torah prohibition to cut the corners of your hair is just the corners. But if you're shaving your whole head, that's only rabbinic prohibition. That's not what the Torah meant. So one rabbinic rule can override another. And the teaching rule is also a drabanan, also rabbinic. So the rabbis can make the rules. When they make their own rules, one rabbinic injunction can override another one. Okay, once again, okay, so fine. That was the haircutting. What about the korban, right? A korban, you're not going to say that the korban is rabbinic, because you can't just bring a korban, an obligatory korban that you made up the obligation. If it's just a teaching obligation, then hakamaisi chulin lazara. So when you bring the sacrifice at the end of Nazirus, it's not a real Nazir sacrifice. It's a fake. You can't bring fake non-hektish stuff, non-sacrificial stuff into the temple. Whereas Rish Lakish maybe holds that that's rabbinic as well. This bringing kulin into the temple. So again, it would be one
problem with that one, because the slaughtering of a chatat can only be done if it really is a
valid chatat.
Yeah, you can do.
Yeah, so I wonder if it's not being specific, like you can bring voluntary sacrifices, right?
Right,
like
you can bring the shlaming and the ola. You can bring under any for no reason, but the chatat. I can't
right.
bring
We have
chatat.
specific rules. Yes,
Yeah.
much more stringent rules about chatas. You're correct. You're correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And last challenge. Bishlama Rabbi Yochanan Amar Alchi ben Nazir Ahachi Kimatame Maisi Carbon Siparin Vachil Kohen Malika. Okay, so there's a detail about the sacrifice of birds, right? When you bring a bird offering, you don't do shchita like we do for eating the birds. You do malika, which is severing the head from the back. Okay, and that is only permitted. That's only a method for korbanos, for sacrifices, but not for regular meat, right? For regular, if you slaughter a chicken, it has to be the regular way from the front, in order for it to be kosher. So if this is not really a sacrifice, then you're doing it wrong. And then how can you eat it, right? El Rabbi Yossi Ruchanina Rish Lakish Hakachim Avela. So according to Rish Lakish, this isn't a real sacrifice. You're killing it the wrong way, and so when you eat it, it's not kosher. So maybe he holds that the shchita for birds, for fowl, is also rabbinic, right? Real like fish, right? Fish, well, not even like fish. Fish, there isn't any kind of restriction, but there's no Torah restriction for how you kill a fish to eat it. So what he's claiming here is, according to Reish Lakish, that from the Torah there's no obligation to properly slaughter a chicken either, or a bird, and that's only rabbinic. So all of the restrictions that you're imagining here are only rabbinic, and therefore they can be overridden by another rabbinic rule, and so that all comes out okay. That according to Reish Lakish, that yes, perhaps the reason that you can impose Nazirus on your son is educational purpose. Okay, now the Savar Rabbi Yossi Hachi. Now this was stated. This opinion of Reish Lakish was stated in the name of Rabbi Yossi. Now we're going to examine, could Rabbi Yossi really have taken this position? Latanya, we have another brisa. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi says, if you have a bird chatas that you bring out of doubt, you're not certain if you're required to bring one. So you need to fulfill your obligation by bringing your possible obligation by bringing the sacrifice, but don't eat it, because then you would be, excuse me. It's now kachim, it's now sanctified, and if it turns out that you were not really required to bring the sacrifice, then you would be eating kachim improperly. So how do I know this? These are sacrifices for a person who is a zav, whether male or female. Makish nekeva lazachar. So it links male and female. Mazach or maybe carbon alavadai, afnekeva maybe a carbon alavadai. So just as a man brings a carbon chatos for a definite avadai, a definite sin, a woman does the same. Okay, and so that seems rather obvious, but Umar Zachar maybe al Safek, and just as man can bring a sacrifice for a case of doubt, woman as well. Umar Zachar Miminshu maybe al Avadai, maybe al Safek, just as for a man, it's the same kind of animal that you bring for a known sin or a doubtful sin. Same for a woman. Ima Zachar maybe carbon v'nechal. So these are all rather obvious, but there is a distinction coming up. Does the in the case of doubt, do you eat the carbon? So here the claim is that a man would eat that carbon, but a woman would not. So I would think via carbon, maybe a woman does so as well. So Amarta, you could say the following: look, not so. Sure, a man does that. A man eats the sacrifice. Shekain isur echad because it's only one doubtful prohibition. Tomer b'nekeva shishnei isurim. Okay. So I guess the idea of doubt here is that, it could be two. There's two possible situations that a woman could be bringing the sacrifice. One is zav, and the other is giving birth. And I think that that sometimes you have like a miscarriage where you're not certain if it's really a birth or not, and if it requires a korban. So there's two possible situations here. So because of that, we're going to make a distinction between men and women, that that the woman doesn't eat from the sacrifice. So now the Gemara continues.
Isn't it the priests who eat those korbanot?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're correct. Yeah, it's the Kohen who eats or doesn't eat. It's right. I misstated. Thank you. So my Shnei Surim, what are the two prohibitions mentioned here? Lav Eastern Avela v'chulim bazara. So what are these two possible things? So now the Gemara is positing that it's it's eating the nevela, in other words, a bird that was not killed properly, the chulin bazara, or eating chulin in the temple, if it wasn't really a proper sacrifice. So doesn't that indicate that? And this is said in the name of Rabbi Yossi. So doesn't that indicate that Rabbi Yossi thinks that these are a doraisa, not the rabbanon? So Maskis la Ravacha B'rei Ravika. So Ravacha asked or answered really, V'dilma mechayev alei mishum mischaze kitrein surim midrabanan. Maybe it looks like not two biblical injunctions, but two rabbinic injunctions. So, in other words, the question wasn't such a good question. Okay, moving on. Lema Ketanai. Maybe going back to the original argument about the Mishnah, the reason for the Mishnah that a man can make his son a Nazir, as we said, Rabbi Yochanan says it's just a rule, tradition, and Reish Lakish says no, it's an educational thing, that the father is educating the son, and that's why it's valid. So maybe this we can attribute this argument to another argument among Tanaim. Here's a brisa. Masai Madir has been Nazir. Until what age can you do this? Can you make your son a Nazir? Until the son achieves majority, which is typically when he starts to grow hair, pubic hair. Divrei Rebbe, so says Rebbe Yossi Rebbe Yehuda Omer, Onas Nadarim, until he reaches the age where he can make his own vows. So that's understood to be a little bit younger, but when he understands the significance of the seriousness, the gravity of vows. My love tonight. So maybe this is what they're arguing about. The Rebbe Savar Alachi ben Nazir. Rebbe says this is actually a Nazir thing. V'yatagav digil onas nadarim. So it's not. It's not like even though the son could. Once the son understands his own nadarim, the father can no longer do it for him. But with Nazir, so with Nazir, the father can continue until he actually becomes an adult. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi, who says that no, the Nazir, the ability to impose Nazirus on the son is only until that younger age, when he understands what another is. He holds that it's just a teaching thing, but once the son understands for himself, it's the son's own responsibility. And once he's understood this, he's no longer kind of subject to that instruction by his father, so he's no longer obligated by his father. So Amrei Love. So Gemara says, no, you don't have to see it that way. You could say that both sides of that Mishnah agree that it's just a tradition. what are they arguing about? So we're talking about the rules about this child who is close to adulthood, and he's almost there. Rabbi Savar Mufla Samachlish Rabbanan Vasya Daraisa Dachya Rabbanan. So Rabbi says that the vows made by such a person, such a child, are only rabbinic. Vasya Daraisa. So and you have this halacha, with Rabbi Yochanan's view that it's a halacha, that it's just the rule of Nazirus that overrides the ability of this child to make his own, to be responsible for his own nidari. No, that it has Torah validity. This idea that that you can make a neder when you're old enough to understand what it is, even if you're not quite an adult. And so you have one deraisa against another, and it is not it's not effective. Or you could answer, you could take the other side. Everyone holds in this mission that it's just an educational thing. And that it's only a drabanan that he can make his own, be responsible for his own nadari. So everything is rabbinic. Rabbi Sabar Asichin Drabanan Vadachi Mufla Samachlish Drabanan. So the question is, which of these rabbinic injunctions should override the other? According to Rabbi, we give primacy to the educational aspect, and so the father can still impose nazirus on the son. Rabbi Yosef the Amarachi Gilon Sandarim Kasavar Lo Asichin Drabanan Vadachi Mufla Samachlish. Rabbi Yossi says no, it's the other way around. The educational aspect takes a backseat to this idea of making the child responsible for his own nadarim once he gets to that age, once he gets to that stage of development. Okay, so Lema Hani Tanai Ki Hani Tanai, Gemara proposes that this argument is reflected in a different Mishnah. The Tanya, Maseh Rabbi Chanina, the Higiro Avi ben Nazir. There was a case of Rabbi Chanina that his father made him a Nazir, obviously when he was a child. And brought him to Rabbi Gamliel. So what did Rabbi Gamliel do? He wanted to check if he was physically mature, right? If he was responsible and therefore responsible for his own nadarim and nazirus. Rabbi Rabbi Yossi says a different story, different report of the case study. Why did they take him to Rabbi Gamliel? To check if he was mature enough to understand the impact or the import of nadarim. So if he was, then the father wouldn't be able to do it on his behalf. So this appears to be exactly our disagreement, right? Is the cutoff point for the child being controlled by his father? Is it when he understands the nadarim or when he physically becomes mature? Anyway, but the brisa continues. Amar lo. So Rabbi Chanina said to Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi, don't bother checking me. Im katanani, if I'm considered a minor, aya b'shvil abbas, and my father has the right to impose nazirus on me. Im gadolani, and if you determine that I'm an adult, aya b'shvil atzmi, so I accept on myself the nazirus on by myself. Amar Gamliel neshaka Rosha, Gamliel kissed him on his head. Amar muftach ani b'zeh shemar alach b'Yisrael. This one is going to be a teacher in Israel. Amr, they said,
found a prodigy.
Yeah. And indeed, in a short time, he actually became a Torah teacher.
It's kind of like the old debate if it's a subjective or an objective standard, right? I mean, is it a case by case basis, or do we just have a bright line, standard?
Well, yeah, that is an aspect of it, yes, right. But the real, I think the kernel of it is it a physical maturity thing. And yeah, you're right. I guess it's just the objective versus subjective.
Right,
Yeah,
physical maturity would be just like,
objective. Yeah.
objective, right? You could just check. And the other one is they have to ask the child, get information. It's like
Mhm.
kids who testify in court,
Yeah.
they're allowed to testify if they basically understand the
The
significant,
gravity of it.
the
Yeah.
gravity of it, so they check, 7-year-old or 6-year-old, whatever. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. Sounds exactly the same. Okay. So now, looking back at this case, Bishlomo Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Damar Chegil Nadarim and Dekamar Im Katananiye Bishilaba. So if the criteria here is the subjective one, as you say, that it depends if he's an adult or not. So then, so he's referring to the subject case. If I'm considered a minor, then my father I'll accept, or then my father's imposition of Naziris on me is valid. And if not, then I accept it myself. El Rebbe Saros, but Rebbe, who says the objective standard of physical maturity, Bim Gadol Ani B'Shulatzmi. So doesn't that imply that if he had reached the subjective stage but not the objective stage, that the father could not impose Naziris on it, right? Claim. But according to Rebbe, as long as hasn't reached the objective stage, he's still under his father's control, and the father could make him a Nazir. So what he must have said, Rabbi Shimon must have said, was "Ehei b'shvil Abba." If I'm not yet mature, then I will be a Nazir through my father's declaration. Ehei b'shvil atzmi. And if I'm already an adult, then I'll be a Nazir. I'm taking it on myself, which is kind of how we understood it in the first place.
Yeah, but how is he allowed to take it upon himself if he's not? A child cannot. Can a child make himself?
No, he's saying if I'm no longer a child, then I'm. If you determine I'm no longer a child, then I take it upon myself. So all we're revising here is where he says if I'm a katan or if I'm a gadol, right? Which implies the objective standard, right? So we take that out of what he was reported to have said, and then we understand it the way we did in the first place. It's just the language. The Gemara was commenting on the language that reported in the case, that it appeared to be referring to only to the objective standard in his declaration.
Right. But if he's still a katan, physically, right?
Yeah.
Can he make a neder?
So then it depends. Then it depends on whether you think the standard is the objective or the subjective standard.
Going just with the objective standard.
Okay. Yeah. Then if he hasn't achieved that standard, he's not mature yet. Then he's still. Then his father still is the one who can impose the
He can't make a neder for himself, though, right?
Correct. But the father can.
No, I understand, but he can't. So how could the child say, "I will accept it upon myself"? That doesn't seem like it would be valid.
Right, but he's saying in the case that it's determined that I'm not sure I understand your question.
How is he allowed? A child cannot make himself a neder, right, by himself.
Right.
So if he's still a child,
to that, yeah.
How can he accept a Nazirut on himself, even if the father?
Well, if you say that it's the objective standard, then that's what he was checking. The question is, it's unclear what what standard he was applying.
I see.
Right. That's the dispute in the report of the story. Was Rabbi Gamliel checking him for the objective standard or the subjective standard?
Yeah, it just seems to me if it's the objective standard, then he cannot That would not work. It would seem to me. But,
Okay.
all right.
Okay, I guess let's go ahead and finish the Mishnah. Yaiseh Shnei Saras Meikara. Now, if Rabbi Hanina had already shown signs of maturity, physical maturity before this incident of his father giving him Nazirus, Kain ben Nazirus delay, then what came out of this was that he did his own Nazirus, right? Because of the condition that he said that, whether it's me or my father, I'm a Nazir anyway. So then if he had not been mature yet, then it would be his own. If he had been found to be mature, then it would be his own Nazirus that he observed. A little bit so. If it was a case where he had not yet physically mature, then it would be his father's Nazirus declaration. The Isim of CMI. What if he became mature during the 30 days of the Nazirus? Right? So it's fine according to Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, because you could say, okay, it doesn't matter when he actually became mature. If we judge that he was already subjectively mature, or mentally and emotionally mature, then fine. Then the Nazirus counts from start to finish. But according to Rabbi Diamar Saros, but Rabbi says it's the physical maturity. So Michael Mamer, you're like, he became an adult during this term of Nazirus, right? So he never really completed it one way or the other, as in the same status. Amrei l'Rabbi like at the concept, like, what are you going to do? What you have to do, what he would have to do is do 30 days, finish out the 30 days that his father imposed, and then do another 30 days of his own imposition. So he would actually, in that case, he would actually have to do 2 periods of Nazir, which is kind of an interesting anomaly.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Makes sense, though.
Yeah, because the idea is he has to do a full 30 days in the same status, either as a minor or as an adult, in order to bring the carbon properly.
He wasn't able to really make himself a Nazir,
Right.
until he became an adult.
Right.
This is weird. Rabbi Yehuda opinion is very strange here.
Yeah. Why does he have to do his own Nazirut? Why isn't it enough for him to just do the father's one? Oh, because he didn't really do the father's one fully or something. It's a suffix, so they just are being.
He can't do the father's one fully.
I think the assumption is that if during the 30-day period he reaches adulthood,
Right.
then he's no longer subject to the Nazirus imposed by his father. So the Nazirus kind of ends officially.
Wow.
So
how is he supposed to?
First place?
I'm sorry?
So why did it take effect in the first place if his father makes him a Nazir 20 days before his 13th birthday, for instance?
That's a good question.
Right. Good. If you know the term of the Nazirut is gonna bump up.
No, you never know. Like, according to
Well,
this,
no, you do if
there's
it's
no
a
13th
Oh, I
birthday.
see.
The 13th birthday is a later
Right.
layer
Right.
on this, because for whatever reason,
That's a good
it was impractical to check everybody.
Right. 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 That's true. You never know.
So you never know, when it's going to happen.
Right. That's true.
So this is like a woman never knows whether her husband is going to annul the vow.
Right.
That's true. So
we got the same situation. All Nazirut for anything other than adult male are.
yeah, but then you would have to have a parallel case where what would be a parallel case where the woman says, if my husband annuls the vow, then I'm taking another vow. Like that doesn't work.
Right.
Right. Plus, the husband only has, well, I guess he has more, you know, he has 24
It's the
hours.
day that he hears of it. Yeah, I thought about this too, but it's not
That's
that
true.
from the day she made it. It's from the day that he hears of it.
Right, right. Strange.
Yasha talk.
Okay,
Okay. See you next time.
Thanks.
Have a good day, everybody.
thank you. very much.
Yes, you too.